Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: North Korea accuses U.S. of stoking tension with nuclear supremacy. U.S. lawmakers introduce resolution urging immediate Gaza ceasefire. Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman earns national recognition for win over USC. Tracking cell phone data by neighborhood, Israel gauges Gaza evacuation. What is Hezbollah? A guide. North Korea accuses U.S. of stoking tension with nuclear supremacy. Reuters. North Korea's nuclear program is a defensive move against the U.S.'s pursuit of nuclear supremacy, according to state media KCNA. The comments come as North Korea has raised alarm in the region with regular missile launches. The U.S. Strategic Posture Commission's recent findings, calling for an enhancement of the country's nuclear weapons program, were described as extremely risky and a hegemonic move. North Korea is seeking to bolster its self-defensive military capabilities to deter a nuclear war, according to Kim Kwang-myong, a researcher at the Institute for Disarmament and Peace. U.S. lawmakers introduce resolution urging immediate Gaza ceasefire. Al Jazeera. Progressive members of the U.S. Congress have introduced a resolution calling for an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire in Israel and Palestine. The resolution is backed by more than a dozen Democratic members of the House of Representatives, including Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Ilhan Omar. The move comes amid growing calls in Washington for a ceasefire in Gaza. Despite overwhelming support for Israel in Congress, Bush said the resolution is an urgent push Americans can rally around. Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman earns national recognition for win over USC. Yahoo! Notre Dame football coach Marcus Freeman has been named the National Coach of the Week by the Dodd Trophy for the second time this season. Freeman received the award after his team's dominating 48-20 win over USC, a top 10 program. This win was considered the biggest of Freeman's coaching career so far. The first time Freeman received the award was after Notre Dame's win over Navy. Tracking cell phone data by neighborhood, Israel gauges Gaza evacuation. New York Times. The Israeli military is using data from over 1 million mobile phones to track the displacement of civilians in Gaza. The information is being used to monitor how many Gazans are heeding the Israeli military's demand to leave northern Gaza for their own safety. The data is displayed on a live map in a control room on an army base in southern Israel, allowing the military to make real-time assessments. The map shows different colored areas to indicate how many residents are still present in each neighborhood, with white and red indicating a majority of residents and green and yellow showing that most residents have left. The military says that this information helps them to make decisions about military operations and reduce harm to civilians. However, Palestinians argue that such measures are meaningless in the face of the severe loss of life and hardship caused by the bombings and displacement. What is Hezbollah? A guide. The Sydney Morning Herald. There are growing concerns that the conflict between Israel and Hamas could expand beyond the Gaza Strip to include Hezbollah, the militant group and political party in Lebanon. Hezbollah, which emerged in the early 1980s during the Lebanese Civil War, is a Shiite Muslim militant group that calls for the destruction of the Israeli state and pledges allegiance to Iran's supreme leader. It has been designated a terrorist organization by several countries and organizations. Hezbollah receives substantial funding, training, and weapons from Iran and is heavily armed with a military arsenal that includes at least 130,000 rockets. While Hezbollah has a political wing in Lebanon that provides social services, its political support has declined recently. Hezbollah is part of a regional alliance with Iran, Syria, and the Palestinian group Hamas, and both Hezbollah and Hamas oppose U.S. policy in the Middle East and do not recognize the right of Israel to exist. The risk of Hezbollah becoming involved in the conflict between Israel and Hamas is a significant concern, as it could potentially escalate the violence further and involve other countries in the region. New Zealand inflation slowdown sees traders pair rate hike bets. Bloomberg. New Zealand's inflation rate slowed more than expected in the third quarter, reaching a two-year low of 5.6% compared to 6% in the previous quarter, according to Statistics New Zealand. Economists had predicted a rate of 5.9%. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand, RBNZ, had forecast a rate of 6%. The RBNZ maintained its official cash rate at 5.5% earlier this month, and stated that policy may need to remain restrictive for a sustained period in order to bring inflation back within its target range of 1 to 3% by the second half of 2024. Investors have reduced their bets on another rate increase following the release of the inflation data. Interception of Canadian military plane by China jets unacceptable, Minister. South China Morning Post. Canada's Defence Minister, Bill Blair, has condemned the interception of a Canadian military plane by Chinese fighter jets over international waters. The incident occurred on Monday when a Chinese jet came within 5 meters of a Canadian surveillance plane participating in a UN operation to enforce sanctions against North Korea. Blair called the Chinese actions unacceptable, dangerous, and reckless and stated that such behavior is not ever acceptable. This incident follows previous encounters between Chinese and Canadian aircraft in June 2022 and a similar incident involving a U.S. military plane in May. Many in Lebanon dread the prospect of war with Israel as tensions escalate in the region. The Globe and Mail. Lebanon, already grappling with a financial and economic crisis, is facing the threat of war with Israel at a time when the country can least afford it. The recent escalation of violence between Israel and Hamas has raised concerns that Hezbollah, a political party and militant group in Lebanon, could be drawn into a war with Israel. Hezbollah has stated its readiness to fight Israel at any time, raising the specter of a wider conflict. Lebanon has already suffered the consequences of conflict with Israel, as evidenced by the destruction caused during the 2006 war. The current situation in the Gaza Strip has reminded Lebanese people of the potential devastation that could be wrought if war were to break out again. Lebanon's leaders are working to keep the situation as calm as possible and distance the country from the ongoing conflict in Gaza. However, the decision for war lies in the hands of Israel. While support for Hezbollah is not universal in Lebanon, there is growing anger towards Israel, particularly under the current government. However, the calculus of conflict has changed, with recent crises and a less supportive international environment making war a less desirable option for Lebanon. Great powers should work together for the sake of Middle East peace. SCMP opinion. The article discusses the escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East and calls for an immediate ceasefire. It highlights the humanitarian consequences of the conflict, with thousands of innocent civilians being killed and a potential humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip. The article also criticizes Israel's response, stating that it goes beyond self-defense and constitutes collective punishment. China is mentioned as a country that has been trying to coordinate diplomatic efforts to prevent further escalation and has expressed support for the unity and cooperation of Islamic nations. The article emphasizes the need for international support and sympathy for a resolution to the conflict, as prolonged tension or war in the region would have negative consequences for the global economy. The ultimate goal is stated as a two-state solution that allows both sides to live peacefully side by side. U.S. and Israel focus on Hezbollah's next move after Hamas attack. New York Times. U.S. and Israeli intelligence agencies are concerned that Israel's expected ground offensive against Hamas in Gaza could result in Hezbollah launching a large-scale military campaign against Israel from Lebanon. Currently, American officials believe that the deployment of 2 carrier strike groups has deterred Hezbollah from attacking Israel. However, American and Israeli officials are assessing that Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, does not want an all-out war with Israel, fearing the damage it would do to his group in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vetoed proposals from his government for a preemptive strike against Hezbollah. Keeping the war confined to Gaza is a priority for both Israel and the U.S., as a major campaign by Hezbollah would force Israel to fight on 2 fronts, and could potentially draw the U.S. into the conflict. Intelligence agencies are trying to determine whether Nasrallah is likely to take actions he had previously avoided, what those actions would be, and whether the threat of direct American involvement on Israel's side will be enough to keep him on the sidelines. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest news from around the globe. Today, we discussed a range of topics, from North Korea's accusation of the U.S. stoking tension to the concern of war in Lebanon. But fear not, I am here to provide you with a lighthearted and humorous analysis of these events. Let's start with North Korea's accusation of the U.S. pursuing nuclear supremacy. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't help but imagine a superhero movie, where the US and North Korea battle it out with their nuclear powers. It's like a high-stakes game of rock, paper, scissors, but with much bigger consequences. In all seriousness, though, tensions between these 2 countries have been ongoing for years, and it's clear that North Korea sees its nuclear program as a necessary defense strategy. But let's hope this doesn't escalate into a full-blown superhero showdown. Next, we have U.S. lawmakers introducing a resolution for an immediate ceasefire in Israel and Palestine. It's heartening to see progressive members of Congress taking a stand for peace in the region. However, with overwhelming support for Israel in Congress, it's like watching a game of political tennis. Will this resolution make a difference? Only time will tell, but it's a step in the right direction. In sports news, Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman has been named the National Coach of the Week. Now, I'm not much of a sports fan myself, but I can appreciate a good underdog story. Freeman's win over USC was considered a major milestone in his coaching career, and it's great to see his hard work being recognized. Maybe one day they'll make a movie about it, complete with a dramatic training montage and a triumphant ending. Moving on to a more serious topic, the Israeli military is using cell phone data to track the displacement of civilians in Gaza. Now, I'm no expert, but this sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. The military using high-tech gadgets to monitor the movements of people? It's like James Bond meets Big Brother. But jokes aside, this technology is undoubtedly controversial, with Palestinians arguing that it does little to address the larger issues at hand. It's a reminder that technology can be a double-edged sword, with both benefits and potential drawbacks. Speaking of potential drawbacks, there are growing concerns that the conflict between Israel and Hamas could expand to include Hezbollah. Just when you thought things couldn't get more complicated, another player enters the field. Hezbollah, a militant group and political party in Lebanon, has a long-standing grudge against Israel. With the risk of escalation, it's like watching a game of geopolitical chess, with each move carrying the potential for dire consequences. Let's hope cooler heads prevail, and we can avoid an all-out war in the region. Shifting gears to economic news, New Zealand's inflation rate has slowed more than expected. Now, I know inflation can be a dry topic, but bear with me. Imagine a race between prices and wages, with inflation trying to outrun them both. It's like a never-ending marathon, where the goal is to keep everything in balance. But with inflation slowing down, it's like the prices are taking a breather, giving us a chance to catch up. Let's hope this trend continues and we can avoid any sudden sprints in the future. In international relations news, Canada's defense minister has condemned the interception of a Canadian military plane by Chinese fighter jets. It's like a game of chicken in the sky, with planes coming dangerously close to each other. But let me tell you, that's not a game you want to play. Aviation safety is no joke, and these actions are rightly condemned as dangerous and reckless. Let's hope cooler heads prevail, and we can avoid any more close encounters in the future. Lastly, we discussed the threat of war in Lebanon, a country already grappling with a financial and economic crisis. It's like adding insult to injury, or in this case, war to bankruptcy. Lebanon's leaders are working hard to keep the situation calm, but the decision ultimately lies in the hands of Israel. War is never a desirable option, and the consequences for Lebanon could be devastating. Let's hope that peace prevails, and Lebanon can finally see some much-needed stability. In conclusion, today's news has shown us the complexities and challenges of our world. From the tensions in North Korea to the potential for war in Lebanon, it's clear that peace and stability are fragile. But let's not lose hope. We, as observers, have the power to discuss, analyze, and promote dialogue. So, I invite you, my dear viewers, to join me in discussing these events and sharing your thoughts. What do you think about the current state of affairs? Do you have any ideas for resolving these conflicts? Let's come together and make our voices heard. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.